All right, so let's start with step one. And you can see it's the sides of the hull, the main deck, the hand railings, and the lifeboat, and the that other part that goes in. So we'll take the parts, we'll get them ready. Let's see, you can see I got the hull ready to go, so let's take it off the sprues. All right, the first thing I'm going to start with is I'm going to do the main deck. And I was wondering what colors to make it. If you look at the box, you can see it's kind of a dark color, and you would think that the deck would be the same color as the sides of the ship. But remember, it's exposed and it's not painted. They wouldn't paint the decks. They would scrub them down, but they wouldn't paint them. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to be using the airbrush, U.S. Art Supply, and I have a couple of different colors. I was thinking of using the more browner kind of color. Let's see, is there an actual title? Coffee brown. I was thinking of using the coffee brown on the outside of the hull and using this for the actual deck, and this is dark brown because the deck would get more weathering than the side of the hull. Remember, the side of the hull would be painted in areas and a little bit more protected. So I prepared the deck. There wasn't really much to clean off. It was really nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the deck first and then do each little individual piece that's going to go on it, like the railings and a lifeboat. But let's start with this. We're going to give it a coat of the dark brown, and I'm going to use the airbrush, and I'll show you what that looks like. All right, so I gave it one coat, one dusting. So I'm going to let that dry. And the thing about the airbrush, especially on what kind of paint you're going to use, instead of trying to get it all over with and cover it in globs and it's dripping, it's better to dust it a few layers at a time until you get that nice desired covering that has no run marks or anything like that. So I'll let this dry, and then we're going to put another coat. The way it's looking, it might need 2 or 3 because this paint is acrylic and it's totally different than using the oil-based paint. So I'll let this dry and we'll put another coat on. Alright, so it had dried and I put a total of 3 coats on. Again, I didn't want to slop it on all at once, so I did it in little bit sections. So that way there, when I try to maybe do a wash, it'll bring out the wood grain. So that's looking pretty good. We'll wait for that to dry, and we'll move on to the lifeboat. Now the lifeboat, I was going to do the same thing. I was going to do the inside, you know, kind of like on the Titanic lifeboat model, the Trumpeter 1/200 scale, but this one is going to be upside down, and it's not really going to show. So I'm going to look into, I've got pictures from when I had gone to see the Mayflower 2 years back, and I'm going to see if I can see actually what colors the lifeboat has. And I'll try to, it's probably going to be the same color as the deck and the side of the hull, but I just want to make sure. And I'll look for the color schemes as well and see if there are anything that sticks out. I notice on this model, it's not really big enough to have the cargo hold hatches and the other hatches, like where the crew would go down. If they do have it, I don't see it. This is a small model, so it's a 1/250 scale. But when this is dry, I'll do the wash and try to bring out the staircases. And I'm going to check to see what color the lifeboat can be. So from pictures from the main website, from the Mayflower, they don't really show the ship on the deck because it's would take up too much room. They have it as kind of like a little dinghy on the side of it. It's really all I got to go by. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to do it that color. It was like a light brown or maybe a tan, and the bottom part was black, and that's what's going to show on here. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put it like a light brown or tan, and the bottom part will be black. And as for this, the deck was a lot lighter than I thought it was going to be. So I'm going to figure out how maybe I can make this just a little bit lighter. Anyway, I've got to wait for it to dry anyway. Alright, so I got, looking at the pictures off the internet of the Mayflower 2 in the dinghy, I was originally putting this color on, the yellow from the airbrush colors. I didn't like it though. I didn't think it looked good. So what I did was I used the testers. This is a type of yellow. Let's see if you can see the title. I can't see the title. Anyway, it's a type of yellow, and testers, especially for something small, the oil base would go on a lot better. And that's the closest it came to the picture. So when this is dry, I'll put the black bottom on, and it'll be all set to mount to the deck. Alright, so what I did was I gave it a dry rub, a kind of a dry brush with the yellow. I wanted to get it, beat up like it's been around. So that's the way I'm going to leave it. I was going to do a dry wash of the black to bring it out, but it's not really going to show that much because it's so small. Like I said, I wanted to get the illusion that it was worn out. So now I can start to put the details on. I think because the ship, looking at the ship from the Mayflower 2, the handrails have white tops to them, so I'm thinking about putting the staircase, the rails, the handrails white, and that'll make them pop out. And doing the maybe doing the hatch and some of the other details on the plastic before I start adding the other details on. But I think I'm going to start with doing the handrails on the staircase, and I'll show you what that looks like when I'm done. So I ended up using the Testors white, the oil base, and I did the handrails on the staircases. So I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do the detail. I'm going to do the hatch in the front, and I'm going to do the doors, and I think I'm going to do that the same color that I did the boat. And I'll show you what that looks like when it's done. Alright, so I used the testers, again the oil base, and I used a toothpick, and I just tried to get the shapes of the doorway and the hatch at the bow. So now we can start taking a look at the things that go on the deck. I was thinking about that piece right there, and probably going to do that in brown. Actually, yeah, probably going to do it in brown. I'm going to see if the top is gold. For some reason I think it's gold, but I want to check the pictures and make sure. But that'll be the next step, and I'll show you what that looks like when it's in place. Alright, so I used the coffee brown on that, and then when it's dry, I'll put a couple of strips of the yellow around the outside just to bring out the detail. Alright, when it comes to the lifeboat, I finished off the lifeboat, and the bottom was black. I used the testers black paint, and now it's It's all set to put back. Well, not put back, but mount onto the deck. So that's all set. I'm just going to wait for this to dry. Alright, so I used the tester's yellow again. And let me show you, I was able to do the detail on the round part. So when that's dry, we'll be able to put that onto the deck. Okay, moving on to the handrails now. The handrails that go on top of the deck. You can see there's there's 4 pieces. And on the box, they're very plain. Everything is kind of a brown. But the pictures that I'm showing you of the Mayflower 2 has the tops of the handrails painted white, and the middle part is green. So that's going to be a little bit tricky because it's so small. So let's go ahead. I'm going to show you the color pattern, and I'm going to get as close to it as I can. So this is one of the pictures off the site, but this is before they had restored it for 2020. You can see the top is white, and the posts are like a dark brown, and it's coffee brown going across. So I got to find a more recent picture of the restoration they're doing for 2020. Alright, so I painted the handrails, and remember, it's only the spokes on the inside that are going to be brown. And the tops and the bottoms are going to be white. So I think it's going to look pretty nice when it's done. So we're going to wait for this to dry, and then we'll do the white part. So one little detail I had forgotten to do, there were a couple of doors up by the bow that I had forgotten to paint. So those are painted. I used a toothpick, and like I said, I tried to get it weathered looking. So the stairs are done, the main deck is done, the doors. I'm wondering if I should do the steps, if that would be overkill. I might do the steps in a light brown or a tan, but I don't know, that might be overkill. You know what, for now, yeah, I'll just leave it the way it is. So right now the deck is all set to start putting all the little pieces on. And we can start with the lifeboat. Alright, so I got the rails painted. They had a time to dry. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the white on the tops and on the bottoms, and it'll be ready to put on the deck. I think I'm going to use, let's see, where is it? I'm going to use the testers as opposed to using the airbrush colors, the USA Art Supply, because I think the oil base is going to do a better job. So I'll show you what that looks like when it's all set. So moving on to the hull part, I think what I'm going to do first is I'm going to paint the inside, the top brown, because when the hull goes in, you can see where it's going to be a little bit of a gap where this is going to show, so I want it to match the deck. And then the top of this railing is going to be white, just like that is. So I think what I'm going to do now is just paint the inside of the hull the same brown as I did for the deck, and I'll show you what that looks like when it's all set. Okay, so I sprayed the inside of the top of the hull, and we'll wait for that to dry. That way there, when the deck goes in, let me get the deck for you, because it's going to be down a little bit. You can see where the square is. That's where the cannon is going to go. So it's going to be down a little bit. So better to paint it now than try to paint it when the deck is in. So when that's dry, we'll put the deck in, and then we can start painting the hull. So the little hand railings are dry. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to glue them to the deck, and I'll show you what that looks like when it's all set to put into the hull. Alright, so I put the little railings in place, and they're all glued, and the hull, the part that I painted, is dry. So what we can do now is we'll go ahead and we'll put the deck and we'll glue the halves of the hull together, and then we can work on painting the hull. I'll show you what it looks like when it's all set. Alright, so we glued the hull together. You can see she's starting to take shape now. So now we can start to color the hull. Alright, so it had a chance to dry. It's all nice and solid. And moving on to the hull now. When it comes to painting the hull, I'm going to use the Mayflower 2, which is a representation, a carbon copy of the Mayflower, built in the 50s, but I'll get into that later. Anyway, I'm going to put up pictures of it, and according to the hull, the painting, the absolute bottom is going to be red, and then there's white. So I'm going to mask off an area, and we're going to put, well, I'm probably going to mask it off from the white down, and then paint it, and then do the line where the white is. So I'm going to follow the painting guide that I'm going to use, which is the photos, and I'll put those up so you can see them as well. So when I mask it off, I'll show you when it's ready to be painted. Alright, so moving on to part 2, we're going to be doing the base now. And when it comes to the base, I want to do, the box calls for it to be black, but the ocean is blue, and I got some real nice blue paint. So I think I'm going to make the base blue, and let me show you the sign or the plaque of the Mayflower. You can see it's raised, it's really nice, and it's kind of like a scroll. So I'm going to make that. That's probably going to be brown. The scroll is going to kind of be yellowish with the black letters, and the base is going to be blue. So let me go ahead and I'll spray down the base with the blue paint. I'll show you what that looks like when it's done. Alright, so I finished painting it. I think this is only going to need one coat. I'm using the Rust-Oleum. And those of you that watch my videos, you know I really like the Rust-Oleum paints. That one has the primer included. So basically the base is all set, and we'll just wait for that to dry. I'm going to start working on the plaque. That's the second coat. And again, I'm not liking this paint. I like oil-based so much better. I might make the switch. This is the airbrush, the US airbrush. Let's see what it looks like when it's dry and see how many more coats I'm going to have to put on. Alright, so I used the Tester's Dark Tan, and I'll do the background or the plank in that. And when that's dry, then I'm going to do the scrolling, and then I'll worry about the lettering. Okay, so when it comes to the cannons, these are going to go on the deck, and they're going to be pointing out the small gun ports. Now, according to the paint guide, it says to paint the base brown and the gun black. Well, having seen the Mayflower 2, I thought there was something different about it, and the bottom of the cannons, the wooden part, are actually painted red. The wheels themselves are either black or brown, and of course the gun part is a dark gray. And I'll put up pictures of the ones that I'm talking about from the Mayflower 2. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the bases of these. I'm going to do them in red, and I'll show you what that looks like. I'm probably going to use the Testors red. I'm not going to use the airbrush color. The oil base will be a little bit better. So I'll show you what that looks like when I finish it. Alright, so the plaque had time to dry, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the Testors kind of off yellow, and I'm going to paint the scroll. And when that's all done, the plaque will be all set to glue onto the base, but I'm going to do that now. I'm going to brush on the yellow paint. I'll show you what that looks like when it's done. Alright, so the red part had a chance to dry, under part of the hull. Now the next part is going to be white, the next layer up. So we'll look at the pictures and then I'll mask it off and get that ready to go. You can see the base. I like that color blue. The base is all set. So, and all I got to do now is give this a second coat, and well, I'll neaten it up a little bit, make that look a little bit more better, a little more detailed, and then that'll be able to finish off the base. But right now, I'm going to mask off the parts, and the next layer is going to be white, so that'll be next. I'm probably going to use the Testors. Again, the oil-based paint is so much better than the airbrush acrylic. Alright, so I'm putting the white on, and the tape, when the tape was on, the paint was going under it, and let's face it, I suck at masking, so it wasn't coming out good. So I'm going to see how it'll look by hand. It's probably going to look terrible, but the white part is done, and when that's dry, we'll go up and we'll do the light tan part on both sides of the ship. Alright, so I went up another layer over the white. I did the coffee brown, and I did that all the way around the ship, and you can see on a couple levels up I did another layer of coffee brown, because according to the pictures of the Mayflower 2 there were different colors in between. Now I know a lot of you are going, yikes, you didn't use the paint gun, and that's true. The colors are going to be separated by a thin black line that I'm going to put in a little while when everything is done. But let me tell you why I didn't use the paint gun. Remember, in the Pilgrim's days, in the 1600s, they didn't have fancy compressors and beautiful ships with beautiful paint jobs. They had wooden vessels, and even if the vessel had been weathered for a long time, they still would paint it. Now, weathered wood with a fresh coat of paint on it wouldn't look like, a brand new ship like they have today. So that's why I figure if I painted it by hand, like they did, then it wouldn't be uniform. There would be tiny little impurities here and there, imperfections that would make it look a little bit more realistic. Anyway, that was my thinking. So when this is dry, that layer I think that layer is going to be blue. I think. I got to double check the pictures, but I think it's going to be a blue layer, and there's going to be some yellow and green stripes on there as well. So when this is dry, we'll move on and I'll show you what the next layer will look like. All right, as far as the nameplate, this is really difficult to paint, and I didn't do that great of a job on it, but I tried to get the scrolls highlighted as best as I can, and the plank that it's going to be on, the plaque, I wanted it to look like it was made out of wood, so I put 2 layers of the yellow on the what's going to be the scrolls and the paper, and 2 layers of the brown that's going to be representing the wood plank. And you don't have to worry about the picture, the Mayflower, the letters. If you wanted to, you could try to paint the raised letters, but that would just be impossible for me. They do have decal that goes right on there. So we'll put the decal, and that'll be all set. That'll finish off the plaque, and this can go onto the base, and that can finish off the base. Alright, so we got the cannons painted. You can see the wheels are done, the base, and the cannon itself, the gun, is painted. I know they had some tie downs for the cannons. I think it's a little too tiny for me to try to do that. I'll consider it when I mount them to the deck. I'll think about putting the rigging in to keep them in place, but they're so tiny, I don't know if I'll be able to do that. But the cannons are done, and they're ready to go onto the deck. Alright, so now this strip, the brown had a chance to dry, the coffee brown, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the blue part in that area, and that's going to go from the bow to the stern and around the ship. So I'll show you what it looks like after that blue is put on. It'll start to really look better. So I got the blue section on, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the white on top of the hand railings, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so I got the pinstriping in, and the model is so small. That combined with the fact that I really suck at detail painting, there was no way. Every time I tried to mask it off with tape, I couldn't get it right. So I had to use like a really, really, really small paintbrush. Let me show you, see if you can get that. It's so fine. It's like a toothpick. So I had to run along the lines of the hull and try to paint just that, but it was so hard for me anyway to do it. I'm going to do some of the detailing now that are up inside. The picture of the Mayflower 2, I think that's green or yellow over the blue stripe. The model kit isn't really exact to the Mayflower, so it's not going to be exactly as the photos, but it's getting there. What I'm going to do now is this side, all the detailing is done in the back, so I'm going to do the other side. And I'll show you what that looks like when it's all set. Alright, so I got the black all set. The lines, and again, it just looks really shaky. But, next Thanksgiving I'll probably do a bigger scale model where I can actually really get in and do the details really well and, well, to make it look like a kindergartner didn't paint it. Alright, so the black parts are done. Let's go on and start doing the detailing on the top. The middle of those parts of the little squares are going to be green. Alright, and again, it's so tiny. I wasn't really able to get it the way I wanted. The little detail and the little squares, the green parts of the ship. I think this is as good as I'm going to be able to get it. Not going to push my luck anymore. Again, this is the detailing is finished on the hull. I had wanted to do some white in those areas, the little triangles, but it's just not going to come out good. It's too small, and I don't have the skills to actually make it look good. So this is it for the hull. The hull is complete. So what we can do now is we can go ahead and start the masts. And I got some pictures, some really good pictures from the Mayflower 2 of the crow's nest. So I'll show you those. And we're going to start on the masts, and I'm going to figure out if I'm going to do the crow's nest first or put them on. Alright, moving on to the masts. You can see on the bottom the crow's nests go on first. And let's see, let me show you the crow's nests. Here they are. And I'm wondering if I should put them on and then paint it, or paint them first. Actually, I think I'm going to put them on, like the instructions say, and then I'll paint them all together, and then I'll do the details of the crow's nest. So let's get them off the trees, and we'll paint them. I'm going to use the brown, the same brown that I painted the deck with. And for the cross beams, for the sails, I'll put the coffee color. So let's paint these up. Okay, so I actually went ahead and painted the masts with the testers. I'm thinking that I should have just done the whole ship in the oil base, because the acrylics aren't really all that great for this model. I used the red is acrylic, and the deck, that's acrylic, the dark brown, but everything else I used the testers, the oil-based paint. So these are all painted. You can see the masts. I'm using pliers to hold them up until they dry, and then what I'll do is I'll paint the flags white, and they're going to have decals that go on them, and then I'll do the detail, the ropes that hold the mast together, and then I'll do the crow's nests. I'm going to show you pictures of the crow's nest from the actual Mayflower 2, and I'm going to go by that design. Alright, so the masts are dry, and I'm going to do the crow's nest now. And the crow's nests are kind of like a yellow, and the parts, the ribs, are green. Show you, see by the pictures. So I'm going to put them onto the masts. I'll glue them in place, and then I'll paint them. Alright, so I painted the flags. The flag on the back was kind of like a pennant, a red pennant. And I put that testers red. And the two main flags are going to have decals that are going to go on them. So I painted them white, so they'll show up a lot better when the decals are on. Okay, so the inside of the crow's nests are painted. The outside, the main color is painted. And the mast in the back is the aft mast is glued into place. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the detail on the bottom of the crow's nest, and then they'll be ready to glue to the deck. Alright, so I did the detailing on the crow's nests. I don't know if you can see. Oh, that one just fell over. You can see how the detail, like I had taken from the pictures. So that pretty much wraps up the mast. So now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to glue them to the deck. Alright, so I got the masts on. I glued them to the deck. And the thing with these small kits, the mast is a little bit bent. And I don't really know how to correct that. So I wait for the glue to dry. The flags are painted. You can see that one's gonna be as is. These have decals that are gonna go on. The crow's nests are painted and they're all set. The front mast at the bow is on. And the detailing of the ship, you can see that as messy as it is detailed. And it's all set to put the decals on because the decals have the windows and the Mayflower logo. Let me show you the other side. Again, it's so tiny. Maybe next year, like I said, I'll get a bigger scale to try to make a more detailed replica. Think about it. This is a very important ship for the United States. This is actually the first ship that brought people over to this country. So I'm not talking about Native Americans that were already here, but the Mayflower actually brought the Europeans here for the first time to set foot on a soil that would become the United States. So this ship is very important to our history. So I wanna honor it a little bit better. So maybe next year I'll do a bigger scale model of the ship. But right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the cannons and I'm going to glue the cannons to the deck. So I don't know if you can tell, but the cannons are a little too high. They won't go out the other side. So that's okay. So I just glued them like they'll be in place. If they need them, they're there. I said it's such a tiny, tiny little kit. The cannons they're ready to defend their little ship. Pretty cute, but and that is everything that goes onto the deck right now according to the instructions. You can see part one is all set. The deck, the hull, that's done. The masts, the flags, the crow's nest, the cannons. All we have is the rigging and the anchor. So what's left? The next video, I'll do the rigging, we'll do the sails, and we'll do the anchor. And of course the details, like, you know, the decals, the finished decals, finishing off the base, because the base is done. There's just a matter of putting the decal on and gluing it, the plaque, to the base. Let me show you some of the video of the ship itself. Again, I apologize that the lines are not clean. It was just so tiny I was not able to do it professionally looking. And the rigging should be pretty fun. That should really bring it together. You see the crow's nests. And it's going to look good. Going to be all set, ready for Thanksgiving to take her place on the table. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. And the conclusion is coming up real soon. Thank you for watching.